Good afternoon and welcome to our afternoon panel, which is the final panel in our teaching series, or 2 days. And I hope people have been following. And I welcome those who are following us right now to the After the Ceasefire, Palestine, Israel, and the Middle East. Let me welcome our two panelists. Nala Abdu is an anti-colonial and anti-imperialist feminist activist and Chancellor's Professor of Sociology at Carleton University. She has extensive publications on racialized capitalism, settler colonialism, and genocide, focusing on Palestine and Turtle Island. Among her recent publications, Israel, Settler Colonialism, and the Genocide in Gaza, Studies in Political Economy. The Palestine Exception, Racialization and Invisibilization from Palestine to Turtle Island. Along with her multiple articles, Professor Abdu published several books, including an oral history of the Palestinian Nakba, Captive Freedom, Palestinian Women's Anti-Colonial Struggle, and Women in Israel, Race, Gender, and Citizenship. Our next panelist is Dr. Muhannad Ayash. Was born and raised in Silwan, Al-Quds before immigrating to Canada, where he's professor of sociology at Mount Royal University. He's also a policy analyst at Al-Baqa, the Palestinian Policy Network. He's the author of Hermeneutics of Violence. He has published several academic articles on topics such as political violence, Zionism and colonial modernity, vaccine apartheid and Palestinian racism, and Palestinian decolonial movements in journals, such as the European Journal of International Relations, the European Journal of Social Theory, Distinction, Critical Sociology, and Middle East Critique. He has co-edited 2 books, the most recent with Jeremy Wildman, titled Canada as a Settler Colony on the Question of Palestine. He is also the author of multiple book chapters and has written opinion pieces for Al Jazeera, The Baffler Middle East Eye, Mendo Wise, and The Breach, among others. Please welcome both Muhannad Ayash and Nala Abdu. And Nala each of the speakers will speak for 15 minutes in terms of an opening sort of a statement from each of the panelists, and then we will go to a conversation after. And I'll ask Nala Abdu to start, and then Muhannad Ayash will follow.
Thank you, Beverly, for all what you have been doing, and that is really appreciated, and for today's workshop or teaching, as you call it. Let me begin with an acknowledgement. I acknowledge that I am sitting, not standing actually, but also standing on the lands of the Omami Winiwag tribes, indigenous people here. To speak about the situation actually right now, although it is called ceasefire, the situation today is no peace, but rather an incremental killing. I don't know what you want to call it. Incremental genocide, little bit of genocides, but killing on a daily basis. Not with, with the huge sort of collective genocide that has been happening, but on a lesser scale. Everything, I think, has seemed to have ceased, that is ended or finished, except for fire, for Israeli fire. So there is, even the notion ceasefire, actually, I think really must be replaced with one that truly describes the reality. We have hundreds of thousands of families. I'm not going to talk about the killed, that is over 100,000 people, or the injured, or all of that. But I want to talk about the current situation where hundreds of thousands of families are reeling under the pressure of mourning their losses, their children, their siblings, their fathers, their parents. And others are still looking for the missing ones under the rubble. The genocide left no schools, it left no streets, it left no buildings, it left no homes, it left no educational centers, it left no hospitals, no, you know, not a single place where people can go to. And people have been driven from north to south, south to north, literally displaced, some of them 3 to 4 to 5 times, carrying whatever remains of their children or little bags, on their bags, on their back. Just the scenery is a scenery of total devastation, of, a true genocide that we have been watching, and I think continue to watch actually on our phones on a daily basis. Today, with heavy rain, actually, for the past actually week in Gaza. And when it rains in Gaza, it's a bit different than when it rains, for example, in northern Palestine or in the middle of, mid Palestine on other parts, because Gaza is very much sitting on sand. It is a beach area with lots of sand and partly a desert place. So the point I'm trying to make here is that when rain comes, it shatters all of the tents that are there. We have seen kids waking up in muddles in water and sand, and not in beds. All beds, in the tents have been spoiled, and of course, with no sun coming immediately, these people are going to reel under this heavy barrage, not only of rain, but of misery for days and days and days. So the situation is really terrible right now in Gaza. Now, today, actually, only today, 22 people were killed. And last week of October, over 100 people have been killed. In other words, that ceasefire is just a talk, no more than that. Remember, we are only talking here about Gaza, the Gaza Strip, and we are not including the West Bank, or where the fascist settlers actually, with the aid coming to them from Israeli army, set fire on people's olive yards, cutting trees, destroying homes, and setting people's cars on fire and killing many. The West Bank. I'm not going beyond Palestine at this point. Gaza has been divided into two halves now. This is the new ceasefire, the new peace process, if you want. There's the red zone, where almost all Palestinians have been displaced and mostly living in tents. In the red zone, where the Palestinians are, there is no construction planned whatsoever. Construction will be designed for the yellow zone, with very few Palestinians allowed to remain there. So it will be built, I don't know for whom, for the Americans, for the big conglomerates, for Netanyahu's wife, or whoever it is. But this is how the situation is going to be. And this is literally half of Gaza that is taken away from the people in Gaza. So we are talking about close to 2 million people, many of whom are still starving there. Gaza of the other day, the American and Israeli, but mainly American, because it's only American capital as well, is trying to silence every single voice, critical voice of the genocide. So they started with the United Nations enforced decision to begin with, that Gaza now will be under the control of international military control, right? Or what is referred to as an international stabilization force. Another mandate, reinventing the mandate we had 100 years back by the British in Palestine. Now, the war, the political power that is used, and money, of course, capital, used to silence people, including, the imposed unilateral sanctions And, on their behalf, on the US behalf, they can force all of these countries to sanction International Criminal Court, UN rapporteurs. We know, the harassment that um, uh, our friend, what's her name? I forgot her name. Sorry, the rapporteur for Palestine. The hardships that she has been going through every time she talks about her report to the UN and the Palestinian human rights groups, and has threatened aid freezes and tariffs on states like South Africa
Mhm.
that pursue legal and policy action. Simultaneously, threats of continued or escalated violence have been wielded in ceasefire talks. So, the so called ceasefire, by the way, is nothing but another round of aggressive assault on the Palestinians.
Mhm.
And once again, I'll be finishing here, but just reminding our audience here that Israel is beyond this. Israel is in the plan to create, Israel al-Kubra or Grand Israel or, Big Israel. I don't know what else to call it, by expanding and, launching killings and wars on Lebanon and on Syria. It has taken a huge part of Syria by now and destroyed a lot of, the infrastructure, the Syrian infrastructure. And in Lebanon, just yesterday, actually, it killed kids in a field playing there in a Palestinian refugee camp of Ain al-Hilwi in the area of Sidon, I think, Saida. So Israel has this grand imperialist ambition, and this is why the West, all of the West, mainly the US, but also Western countries, are still defending the so-called Israel defense of itself. Now, how is Israel defending itself? By not being attacked by Syria, but going and invading Syria, I don't know. But by not being attacked by, southern Lebanon after they killed the leadership there of Hezbollah and of the resistance, how are they, their security is endangered? I also don't know. So please, when you try to challenge all of these deceptions and false claims that are taken from Israel and adopted by the West.
Mhm.
I would like to stop here and, give the floor for our friend Mohannad.
Okay. And we'll come back with questions. Okay,
Sure.
Muhammad?
Thank you so much, Nahla. Thank you so much, Beverly, first of all, for your tireless organizing and your efforts throughout the years, not just this year, and always making sure to include Palestine in any of these discussions before the genocide started as well, this latest genocide. I'm speaking to you today from the homelands of the Pekani, the Siksika, the Kainai, the Stony Nakoda, and the Tsuut'ina nations. Despite Canada's attempt to eliminate these nations, I will always recognize this as their homeland. It always has been and always will be. Yeah, and it's a great pleasure to be with you, Nahla, again, of course. And I agree with everything that Nahla said. Maybe the angle that I'll take, so that there's no repetition here, or reduce the amount of repetition for the audience, is how did we get to this plan? Right. Okay. So first of all, it's far from a peace plan. It's nothing to do with peace. And it's not even a ceasefire, as Nahla says. So what is it? How did we get here? And where are we looking? What's looking a little bit forward down the line? What's coming down the line? In my view, the reason why this plan was agreed to and released and all the hoopla and all of it was because I think the Arab states and some Muslim majority states don't the elites in those states and their governments don't actually care for the Palestinian people. What they care about is going back to making money and building their soft and hard power. That's it. And they know that this brutal onslaught, a genocidal onslaught against the Palestinian people, is in the way of those three things.
Mhm.
And it's agitating their population way too much. And of course, authoritarian regimes like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Morocco, that's their biggest fear is their population rising up in in a revolutionary movement against them. And it's always the spirit of the Palestinian struggle that tends to animate that revolutionary spirits in those spaces. So they wanted it to go away. The Europeans likewise had similar feelings. Prior to the announcements of this thing, a friend of mine here was getting texts from his friend in Italy saying, "I haven't seen anything like this. Italy's about to blow up. Like the revolution is here." Like it was so much mobilization. Spain through the roof, the UK. These countries were also afraid of their people's revolutionary spirit, and they most importantly for them wanted to go back to business as usual with Israel, especially in the military-industrial complex. And we see that today. France today or yesterday, whatever, in the military exhibition, now Israel is back in because there's the ceasefire. Right? You can see that this is exactly what they had in mind. Right? All these Israeli companies, 30 plus, are attending the exhibition, which they banned them from attending last year, I think, or something like that. Right? Like so, but now it's like, oh, it's all good. Bring Israel back. We can buy weapons from them again. This is kind of the calculation there. Same with Canada, by the way. Canada, I put it more on the European set of interests. I think essentially Trump was convinced, especially by Erdogan from Turkey and by the Qataris, that what Netanyahu has been selling him on is not working. And what Netanyahu had been selling him on from the beginning is that this is the moment to expel the Palestinians from their lands once and for all. Let's end this. This is the moment where you got to let us unleash all this genocidal violence so that's it. This will end once and for all. They'll never reappear as a question anywhere, as a struggle that will be eliminated. All their supporters will be gone. We're going to reshape the Middle East where none of this exists anymore. And Trump went along with that, and he agreed with it, just like the Biden administration did. That was, Biden was probably more convinced of this and more ardent supporter of this than Trump was. I think Erdogan in Qatar got into his ears and said, "This is not working. Look, the armed resistance is still not even defeated, let alone the people. They're not leaving. And if they do leave, it's hell for us authoritarian regimes." Obviously, they don't talk that way, but I'm going to do the translation. It's not good for us, and it's not good for us. It's not good for you either. And I think they convinced him on that point. And they from all the reporting that I'm seeing is that the Arab states had some language, and the Muslim majority states like Turkey, Pakistan, Indonesia, Malaysia that joined in. They had some language in the initial plan that then Netanyahu came in and just erased it all. Because the Israelis, of course, were afraid of this kind of this is what the Israel lobby fears the most in the US especially, is that the American foreign policy would start to follow what they called it an Arabist path, right? Like this is debate within foreign policy since the 60s. Do we go put our hat with or our lot with the Arab authoritarian regimes? They'll help us steal their people's shit. It doesn't matter. Or do we support Israel, which is a settler colony? Invaders that are not welcome in the region because they've invaded these lands and expelled the Palestinians and committed genocide and enormous violence, not just against the Palestinians, but against the Syrians and the Lebanese and in history as well, the Egyptians and Jordanians, Yemenis. So because they're not, so that was the debate. Like, do you follow Israel? Do you follow the authoritarian regimes? And the Americans, like the British Empire, calculated that it's in their interest to follow the Israel because you're guaranteed with that regime that they're going to be loyal to you. Their existence depends on you. They can't exist as a settler colony in the region, in Palestine or in the Middle East, unless the US, and prior to that, the British Empire, allows that to happen and maintains that. So they're not going to come back and stab you in the back. The post-colonial authoritarian regimes can be very shaky, alliance, because what if a revolution comes in and takes over all the weapons that you just gave that regime? What if they play games on you, et cetera, because ultimately they don't like you because they know that you're overpowering them. So like other colonial projects in the past, they sided, of course, with the idea of a foreign entity placed in the middle of the region in order to secure their imperial interests, and it becomes their largest military base in the world. And it does things that no military base can replicate. Um, uh, uh, in terms of weapons development, in terms of intelligence, in terms of doing some dirty work like assassinations and things of that sort, right? Arming political coups, et cetera, which they did in Central America. You know, Israel plays this role for the Americans, not just in the Middle East. Talk to people in Latin America; they'll tell you this is not even like debated among Latin American scholars that you know, Israel armed all these right-wing coups, of course, for on behest of the Americans. Like that, that's the kind of job that Israel does for the Americans, and they view that as irreplaceable. But you know, essentially with this, so the Israelis kind of were fearing that the Arabs were making inroads in shifting the Americans back towards, or not back, but towards the Arab regimes and less towards Israel, and that doesn't bode well for their vision of Greater Israel. So they've looked at this plan from the beginning, especially with the changes that Netanyahu made, as okay, we've made it vague enough. We can continue on the path of creating Greater Israel, and that's still the path that they're on. They're still on the path thinking that they're going to eliminate the Palestinian cause once and for all, et cetera, et cetera. The Arabs think, oh, we got enough vague language that we can create a fake Palestinian state. And that's the only interest of the Arab regimes. They want a regime that looks like them. So that's why they love Abbas, or if Abbas behaves too badly, they'll put someone else. But
Sheikh.
they want that neoliberal political elite. Just again, make money and shut up, and you know, forget like full sovereignty or right of return. All that is gone, and make us money. I should say, we'll give you crumbs, make us money, and shut up. Yeah, that's kind of what they would like to see. So that's kind of where we're at today with this plan, is that the Americans view it as a good compromise between the Arab states and Israel. The language is vague enough, and the Americans, I think for someone like Trump, for sure, it's just like, well, whoever wins this, go for it. Like, I don't care. As long as I make money and as long as my friends make money and generate capital and establish that imperial infrastructure of violence in the region that helps the US not just project power in the region, but more importantly, beyond it. The Americans view this region as a critical one in their larger larger conflict with China. And it's not just energy as a resource, of which the Americans have plenty as a resource, but it's the energy markets that are critical. And they believe that whoever controls the global energy markets will have a huge upper hand in such a war, whether it's a Cold War or an actual war. The conflict and the war has been happening between China and the US. And they want to maintain that major advantage, and that's why for them that region still remains so important. And as well, you know, all of the wealth, that trillion, yeah, not billion, $1 trillion of investments that the Saudis pumped into the American economy yesterday, or announced that they were doing that. Of course, they've been pumping money into it for a long time. So there's, you know, many advantages that the U.S. sees in its sort of hegemony and power in the region. And the people paying the price for all of this are, of course, the Palestinian people, who have been betrayed by their own elites, political and economic elites, and certainly by the political and economic elites in the region. And that's kind of the most disappointing and infuriating thing, is how little has changed since the 1930s rebellion. And, you know, Nahla knows a heck of a lot more about this history than I do. But it's, you know, Nahla, please correct me if I'm wrong, but that was kind of the pattern back then, is that rebellion, that revolution was betrayed by the Arab elites, and crushed by British imperialism, with Arab elites promising the Palestinians, you know, enough is enough. We've made some headways for you in the international arena. Let's go back to calming down here, and you're going to get this state and all of that. And it was all nonsense.
More now than before, by the way.
More, okay, so it's even gotten worse. I was going to say nothing has changed, but
No, it got worse.
yeah, it's even worse now. So that's the really, you know, disappointing part for me, is that, yeah, as Nahla says, it's gotten worse even. And the global South has, by and large, failed in this moment to really rise up and present a tangible opposition to U.S. imperialism and Israeli settler colonialism, and it's a great opportunity missed. With the 2 minutes that I have left, I've said this from the beginning of this genocide. If the global South was really serious about really putting a dent into American imperial power, forget creating an alternative decolonial world at this stage. Like, I'm just saying, like, weaken them. Like, you don't even have to follow what I and other scholars argue should be the decolonial alternative. If it should be in your interest to weaken them. I mean, even if you want to advance something terrible that I don't agree with in its place, just you would want to weaken them. And they all just tossed it. They could have just isolated the Israeli state. It's that you wouldn't have had to come into direct confrontation with the US. You could have sold it in the public arena and international diplomacy, international law, that you are isolating Israel, nothing to do with the US, just isolating Israel. But everybody would know what you're actually doing, and the US would know what you're doing, but they couldn't, sort of switch that discourse around. And if China, the Saudis, or Egyptians, Moroccans, Malaysians, Indonesians, Turkey, South Africa, Nigeria, Senegal, Colombia, Brazil, if they all formed together and said, tomorrow, no more business with Israel, that's it, it's done, no diplomatic relations, no economic relations, you're going to make Israeli settler colonialism impossible. And especially when you say that this is like a forever thing, like we're not getting off this path until there's decolonization, and we're going to create a global majority we're going to keep working, do all our diplomatic work to create a global majority against this. They could have done this, and that would have put enormous pressure on Israel, and it would have taken a huge tool of power out of the U.S. imperial toolbox, if they were successful in that endeavor. They didn't do it. Nothing is gone forever. No opportunity is gone forever. I'm not counting this out, but that was the 2 years to do it. So that's where all, Canada, the US, the UK, they all acted in ways we all knew they would act. The really disappointing and maddening part is what the Global South did. So I'll end it there. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. I want to start by saying, in terms of Nala, you provided us with, what your description of what's happening on the ground is very palpable. You can literally feel, if you can't feel it, then you clearly, you clearly don't have a conscience, or you clearly don't have any sense of what it is to be a livable person. If you don't feel in your bones what you have described, right? The devastation, the everyday continued devastation, and you wonder, how people are still able to push forward because bombs are falling on them. Their children are being burnt alive. It goes on and on and on, and there is starvation. There is no food. No food is getting in, but food is also getting in a way that's also killing people, clearly. Food is almost used as part of the mechanism of war, in the part, and when I say mechanism of war, meaning Israelis' genocidal war, that is, against the people, against the Palestinian people. And, Mohanad, it was really wonderful to hear you speak to the geopolitics, in the region, and the way in which, it's clear, because we get this conversation here all the time, in the West, about a two-state solution. And you kind of wonder, what the hell is a two-state solution? Palestinians have said they don't want a two-state solution. Am I correct or not? What does that mean to have a two-state solution? What would that look like? And is that in any way possible? Palestinians are asking for Palestine and the right to their land, and the right to return to the land that they have always they've always lived on. So what is this two-state solution, which we know will it's not a possibility, right? So why do they keep touting this particular strategy, which never would come to fruition? And I'm really I like the fact that you talked about the role that, the surrounding Arab nations are playing in terms of their own vested interests around capital and around, energy, regional energy power. And the US's, role in that, which is, I mean, Trump has a particular kind of interest, and that is he operates he rules, he treats everything like business, I mean, that's the other thing, he operates as if he thinks in terms of, creating these Riveras everywhere, these very big, I mean, clearly I've never been to Palestine, but from all I've read and all I've heard, that Palestine is, there's the water. And that's and he's looking at that as some kind of a billionaire type of resort that he can create with all these big towers, and the rich and it can become a playground for the rich, right? In the meantime, Palestinian people are still there. What happens to them? What happens to Palestine? And I want to ask also if I want to ask, there is action happening in the diaspora. And you made a very key point, Mohanad, when you said, that the southern countries have failed, in the sense of really mobilizing against what's happening now, that Palestine should not have come to this situation right now. That could have ended if these countries that you named were willing to make hard decisions and to go against the interests of Israel and that of the US. But instead, they didn't. And I want to talk about why is that? Like, why is it so, and why is it so hard for countries like these countries, including South Africa, who actually understand apartheid and who was the first to come out and support Israel, but nevertheless, it almost seems as though they're playing a kind of a soft game as well, and who could actually push much harder, but also the other countries, and to talk about why is it that Palestine remains this particular nation of people who everyone seems to want to see silenced, quieted, disappeared, removed, gone. Why is it taking so long? And why is it so hard for people, for all of these nations to see that this is a people who have always fought imperialism and colonialism and continue to do so, and that they're never going to give up. Like, let us be clear, Palestinians will not surrender, right? So what would it require from those of us who are activists on the ground? Because I too worry about, our excitement about symbolism and be every little symbolic thing that we get excited about, as and this is not in any way an attack on the flag raising, but I hope that this doesn't become what it is, that this is now, maybe the nations are listening to us, we're being heard finally, but that these little things are meant to make us feel good in these short moments, but it isn't meant to drive the movement forward. So I'm just going to stop and let you take those up. I know it's a mouthful.
The two-state solution that you mentioned, why it is good and so many support it, and why it is bad and the Palestinians do not want it, or part of the Palestinians, not all the Palestinians. Even the Palestinians are not one part, are not a unity. Not because of the people do not want to be a unity, but because of the so-called PA, Palestinian administration, or whatever they're called actually, that have been enjoying sitting on chairs, getting their salaries, and enjoying the lavishness of fleeing from one place, or going from one place to another. So from Abu Mazen, who is in his, I don't know, late 80s, and who can hardly walk, but still is against any resistance movement. The Palestinians are damned because for over 100 years they have been resisting colonialism, resisting imperialism, and resisting Israeli apartheid occupation. So they are a thorn in most of the West, but also mainly in the Arab regimes, because Arab regimes, as Mohanad has rightly said it, they don't want to see a revolution within. They don't want to see their people coming up against them. They don't want to see, troubles in their midst. So they have to silence their peoples. I mean, the amount of silencing Egypt is doing on its population is tremendous. Similarly with Jordan. And remember, Jordan, probably the majority of Jordanians are Palestinians. And this is why it is more, force is more employed within the Jordanian context in order to calm down or in order to, not appease, but silence, any resistance. Because we have seen a lot of resistance and resentment in Jordan earlier, but we're not seeing it now, by the way. So in the process, unfortunately, some of the events, of the movements, of the activism that was happening in some Arab countries is not there. We have seen more demonstrations in Tunisia. We were proud of the Tunisian public. We're not seeing it there. Algeria played some sort of a decent role within the United Nations, but it stopped at that level, at the level of presidency and government, and it did not really go down to the people. So there is a huge disappointment by the felt by the Palestinians towards their so-called brothers and sisters, Arab brothers and sisters, right? And that is, that includes all of the, literally all of the Arab countries. So to begin with, you have 23, 24, I don't know how many more Arab countries in the Arab League that, are silenced. And, some of them are trying to just play the third party or the role of, mediating between the US and Israel, the US and Palestinians, the US, etc. The two-state solution is undoable simply because there is no spot, there is no place, there is no geography for an additional state. Israel has captured the majority of the land of the West Bank, and there is nothing in Gaza, to put settlements on. So there is no place for, so it's illogical altogether. Now, it was, a symbolic, fun thing for Palestinians in 1991 until 1993, after the first Intifada and the takeover of the PLO and the takeover of Israel and the US and the Oslo Agreement. The Oslo Agreement was supposed to be, the beginning of the so-called peace process or two-state solution. But we have seen that it was, a simple bluff, if you want. It was a total bluff. It was not, any genuine thing on the part of Barak or on the part of, what's his name, the Labour Party, who was, who received Peace Prize, right, with Paris.
Peres and Rabin.
Peres and Rabin. So think about it. Think about what kind of, it's not a conflict, by the way, between Israel and the Palestinians. It has never been a conflict. It has always been a settler colonial mode of control over Palestine. So I hate the term conflict. Whenever it is used by ignorant people. Conflict is something that could be resolved in so-called peaceful, relationship. Israel does not believe in peace. Israel does not want two-state solution. Israel does not want a Palestinian state. Israel does not care about any UN decision or international, law or, any decision, including the US that has made it possible for Israel to do all of the atrocities that it did with the weaponry that it received from the US. It can say no, to the US when it is about killing more Palestinians, and it has done it. And the US would come with, another justification why Israel did what it was not supposed to do. quote unquote. So the point I'm trying to make here is that, a Palestinian state is not desired by Israel, is not wanted whatsoever, and it will not allow it to happen. What Israel wants, as I said, is control over the whole area, not just, the West Bank and Gaza, but also of Syria and Lebanon, and when it can, Jordan, and when it can, it can expand to Saudi Arabia, believe me. It can expand to Saudi Arabia, who is now, sort of standing as the only possible rational sort of, symbol that America is, looking for it in order to go into part of this, the Abraham Accords, or basically make peace with Israel. Israel is not a country that was born to be a peaceful country. To begin with, it was an outsider, a foreign power that was literally implanted inside, a place where, Jews from all over the world did not belong to. And many Jews tell you that. Israel does not, it's what it is doing is not in my name. And this was a very clear slogan for many Jewish cadre, especially the young Jewish students here in Canada, but mostly in the US as well, also all over the world. So the voices of these young Jews have really rebuffed, if you want, all of the Zionist claims of Jewish right in the land of Palestine or on the land of Palestine. So it's a complicated thing, but complicated in the sense that it is so clear who is the victim and who is the victimizer, who is the colonial and who is the colonized, and who is the occupier and who is the occupied. So people all over the world, many people, by the way, I have to say, have opened their eyes and their ears, and there is a change. And I'm hopeful. There is a lot of change, especially among the young generation. And, Muhannad, who belongs to this category of people, can, of course, tell us more
I love it.
about, I'm talking about the young generation, basically, who are, taking the streets, who are taking the campuses, who are, all over the place. And this is our hope. So it is these young Palestinian and Jewish and American and, from all of Spain, Northern Ireland, and South Africa, by the way, did what most or all Arab countries could not do. So we're thankful for South Africa. Seriously. And now it is, could be under sanctions by the US for doing the good thing, for doing what was needed to be done. So, the two-state solution is gone and gone for all. What you need to do and fight for, seriously, is a one-state solution. Okay? Now, at this point, I don't care much about the name of that state, but it should include all of the Palestinian territory. It should give the right of all Palestinians who want to return to be able to return back, okay, to their areas, to their homes, to, just return back. And, all the Jews who are there, who want to be there, are welcome to stay there, but as equal members to the Palestinians who are the true and original owners of this land. And you are not above them, and you have no rights over them. So this is the kind of thing that I'm sort of hoping and working for the future. Now, how exactly, it doesn't matter at this point. It's the idea, it's the principle, it's the way I see justice happening. And we are talking about justice and humanity. The inhumanity in the world right now, of all of the countries, even the countries of the South that Muhammad mentioned earlier, okay, and all of the Arab countries, and so many European countries, the inhumanity there is undescribable. Although there, many, especially in the West, their people, the young people there, are saying no. saying no to their leaders and saying no, to what's happening around them in the world. So perhaps, these are the challengers of the future. And these are the ones that we need to put our, our faith in and trust.
Mohammed, and I'm going to throw this out. Thank you so much for that, Nala. Now that, what I've heard you just say, and which is really important, is that the kind of uprising that we're seeing is really critical, to actually shifting. And it is the uprising and the sustenance of that uprising and the fearlessness and the insistence of that has led to some kind of force that has pushed those nations to even open a little bit, whatever that is. It doesn't change anything, but it allows more people to see that this is not in their best interest, what the US and what Israel is doing. And that it is driving a kind of a global agenda that is impacting everybody, actually. It's impacting us globally. What is happening, what they're doing to Palestine is no longer constituted as just Palestine. That is now a global context for all of us, because we are all being impacted by it. So thus you're seeing these pushback from people on the ground. And I want to ask, what else must we be doing, right, to ensure that Palestinians continue to live, that the burning and killing and bombing of Palestinians end, that, as Nala says, that a state for Palestine, whatever that, as you say, whatever that we choose to name it, becomes viable and actually start existing, where Palestinians can live and they can return from the diaspora, various diasporas that they have been forced to live. What more can we be doing? Yes, people are on the ground and people are organizing. We know there's a sustained organizing by Palestinians in the diaspora and pro-Palestinian supporters. But is what happening enough? There are other things we should be doing. Do we need to be much more forceful, demanding of what needs to happen? Do we need to push this? They're pushing their agenda very fast, right? But it seems as though ours are at a slower pace. What should we be doing to really push that agenda of ensuring that that Palestine, a state for Palestinians, is created in the near future, and not within another 100 years that we have to wait for this to happen, right?
Yeah, so thank you, and that was excellent, and I enjoyed I agree with the Nahla. Enjoyed your first intervention as well, Beverly. Let me tie what you just asked first into another point that you mentioned before, which was around a little bit geopolitics. So let me start with that and end with what you're focused on here. So because you asked initially the question of why aren't these states doing more, and I think you do have to look at the answer in different states. So, like Nahla said, South Africa has done more than many other countries has, but it also hasn't gone the extra step of economic ties with Israel. So activists within South Africa will tell you that, right? That they're still demanding more of their government, and it's not doing it. Now, the reason I gathered from my time in South Africa, the reason why is because they're afraid of the US reaction. And the US already told, even just for taking Israel to the ICJ, the US was threatening sanctions and cutting off funding. And South Africa cannot survive without it. And I can understand it from the position of some of these politicians that they go, there's only so much harm that I can unleash against my people. What can I do? I don't want, I also don't want my people to suffer. And I get that. I think that's a
Or to
legitimate.
rise up against you.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. I think but yeah. So yeah, whether it's coming from a good place or a self-interested place, you're right.
But that's not sometimes a good thing. But
But yeah, so I get it, but this is again goes to my point is that there needs to be this coalition that builds, because if all the countries I listed plus others all do it at once, the U.S. can't actually do anything in retaliation because it would now lose more than it could benefit, and it couldn't withstand a loss of all that kind of investments and economic relations with all those countries. It couldn't invade them all, et cetera, right? So you could limit their power to harm you if you get it in a coalition. So and then when you go, well, why isn't this coalition forming? And this is and this is why I'm focusing a lot more on the Arab states, because a lot of those countries would go, well, the Arabs don't want it. And why should I take a lead on this? If the Arab states don't want it, and they're talking about Saudi, UAE, Egypt, Morocco, if those states don't want it, why am I putting my neck on the line? What's in it for me? And if they think this is okay, and this other plan that they have is working, or it might work in the future, then what's in it for me? And I'm actually sympathetic to a country like Nigeria telling me that. I'm sympathetic to that. Like, why should Nigeria put its neck on the line and do all this work, which may or may not work, especially if they don't have the buy-in from the Arab states.
yeah.
So I do bring it back to the Arab world, and I think that there has to be some major transformations there,
That's
in order for real pressure to start to build on the international level. And this is now I want to bring it into your second question. Because the Palestinian movement is a people power movement. We don't have a state, we don't have a military, we don't have things to sell you, we don't have economic incentives for you. We have a beautiful homeland, but that's it. And we have a beautiful spirit. But most people, most states are want to need more than that. So we don't have that. So we're a people power movement. That's why people around the world also connect with the Palestinian struggle, because they know that the Palestinian people have stood in their bare bodies, essentially, stood up against one of the most violent and brutal, morally uninhibited military machines in history. Not just the Israeli military machine, but backed by the American one. And we've been fighting it for over 100 years and still are. And when it's your ultimate people under power underdog story. I mean, it just people kind of understand their own oppression by these systems, or similar systems, and their aspirations for a more dignified life, a liberated life. And they see that in the Palestinians, and that's what connects them to it.
And that, and even in that, even amongst Palestine and Palestinians, even in that state, they have extended solidarity to countries like South Africa, to the Black liberation struggle, to the indigenous struggle, even as they are under siege.
Of course, because we see also our kinship when we see those struggles
And
as
vice
well.
versa with the
Right, exactly. So it's actually like a very organic type of commitment and relation that you have there, right? So that which is the last 2 years especially has come to shape the political consciousness of an entire generation that are not going to just forget it because there's some, $1 million propaganda campaign being launched to make Israel look, this data or sorry, tech of, startup, blah, 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 all this nonsense. Like the young generation is going to laugh at it more than anything. And they're not going to really buy into it. So I think that political consciousness will materialize in the future. Now, I hear you, Beverly. I want to see it 10 years ago, let alone tomorrow. But I do also want people to adopt that Palestinian sumud, be ready. Be ready for a long one too. And if your generation doesn't get there, pass the baton to the next one and make sure they keep going and they have the guidance to do it. And take on that long game. You have to have that mentality, and hopefully you don't need it, but you have to have that mentality as well. And I think that one of the things that has been inspiring and good to see over the last 2 years is that people in spaces like Canada have become more sort of forceful in their stand for Palestinian liberation. Like, okay, let them say whatever they want to say about me. I don't care. We know it's smear campaign designed to silence Palestinian freedom and liberation, and I'm not going to let that happen. And I think people need to respond that way. And I think people need to start to really call out the complicity of their institutions, regardless of where they are, and continue to push for that material pressure on Israel. You can't get to the vision that Nahla is talking about, or any vision for that matter. You can't even, I say this now, you can't even get to a fake Palestinian state unless you do economic and political isolation of Israel. Because Israel doesn't even want to pretend that it wants a fake one now. Like they're even off that. For a few years there, they were like, yeah, maybe a fake one in down the line. But now they're like, not even a fake one. No, don't even talk about that, right? So even if you want a fake Palestinian state on something like 5 to 10% of the historic land of Palestine, even if you just want self-administration on just that, five, because it's not going to be the 22% of the West Bank and Gaza. Like Nahala said, they've already taken so much of that, and they plan to take more. So even if you want that fake state on 5% of Palestine, you still need to do economic and political isolation of Israel because they don't even agree to that. So you need to put material pressure on Israel and make that your lifelong goal. Boycott, divestment, sanctions, long life goal. Like that's it. You're committed to that forever, and you're going to push it wherever you are. In whatever capacity that you have, and don't fall for those symbolic, raising of the flag at City Hall or whatever, and keep pushing for those real material things, and that's the critical point. And by the way, I just want to finish with this. This political consciousness is really spread in the Arab world.
Right.
Despite the incredibly disappointing and negative directions that we've seen the Arab states move into, their people are really moving into an opposite direction. Now, there's a great deal of fear, the
Right.
lack of belief in the idea that people of power can achieve freedom and liberation for the people in those countries. That's become a big obstacle as well. So those two big obstacles, there's probably others, but I don't have time to kind of like maybe think of them all. But I think those are two big ones. The obstacle of fear and the obstacle of people don't believe that they can actually enact change and liberation anymore.
Right.
Are big things to overcome in the region, but the desire and aspiration is there. It's very widespread. Go to Morocco and see how the people talk
Yes.
versus what the government says,
Yeah.
and you'll see it. You don't take my word for me. Like you'll see it. Go to YouTube, watch them talk about it. Watch a soccer match. Watch how they cheer for Palestine in those matches, right? Like et cetera, et cetera. Like
Absolutely.
it's widespread. So
Yeah.
when those revolutions come, and I don't know when and how they will come, but they will come. And when they do come, Gaza and Palestine will be a rallying cry.
Thank you. I'll give Nala the last word.
It
We
won't
have
be long at all, but I want to emphasize your term of fear, your encouragement of people to follow the BDS, the boycott, sanctions, and divestment, because these are extremely important methods to use, to continue to use, and strengthen the work for it. Now, these are challenges in addition, by the way, and this is very important for us here in Canada, in addition to challenging all the Zionist propaganda, mainly the IHRA, that is being sort of enforced into campuses, into universities. We need the students as well as faculty to stand up against, the imposition of, the imposition of silencing, basically, because IHRA is there, or IHRA is there to silence Palestinians and pro-Palestinians from criticizing Israel. era has been able to equate, if you want, Zionism with Israel and anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. And we should not accept that at all. It is wrong. It is BS. It is, a political tool that is used to silence people. So people, especially the young, the youth in Canada, need to remember the challenges they have now, I think, are much more, if you want, stronger and more diverse even than the challenges they had at the beginning of the genocide. Now, the challenges are geopolitical, and the challenges are economic, and the challenges are ideological, and challenges are cultural, because, the Israeli propaganda, the Zionist propaganda is, as you said, is spending, not only millions, but also a lot of power and, infiltrating into so many countries all over the world. And that is, a negative point for the students who are, especially the young people who are fighting now. So our struggle, our challenges are much bigger, and we need to stand up for all of these. And this is, as you said, this is the work of your generation now and the next generation later, and hopefully, the struggle will continue. It will not stop, especially now with so much consciousness and so much, has entered into people's understanding. People didn't know Israel before. They didn't know, I mean, they knew Israel, they didn't know Palestine. They didn't know Israel in its reality. They knew Israel as the only democracy in the Middle East. And all of that turned to be wrong. All of that turned to be lies. All of that turned to be, fabricated information. So more and more truths are being told and are being heard by, so many people from the ground. And I agree with you, finally, Muhannad, on the point that there will be a point in the Arab countries where the people will rise up. There will be, I mean, it's impossible for them to stay silent.
Thank
Just,
you.
for their own, for their own, for their
Unity.
own shame,
Yeah.
look at all of these people all over the world,
Exactly.
and not us.
People are
These
rising up,
neighbors, and
right?
there are families, and there are intermarriages between all of these people. They speak the same language. They have similar culture. How come, nothing is coming out of you guys?
Yeah,
So they will come out,
yeah.
and be part of the movement against settler colonial imperialist, control over the area.
Thank you so much, both of you. Thank you to Nala Abdul and Mohanad Ayash. I mean, it's always wonderful to have you on here and to hear and to be part of the conversation with you. Thank you so much. I
Thank
also
you, Beverly.
Yeah, thank you, Beverly. Really appreciate it. Yeah.
I also want to thank our followers who have followed us over the last 2 days. Tremendous thanks to you all. I also want to thank the Scholar Strike for Liberation Committee this year, Wad, Judah, Hadley Howes, Sarah Rasick, Susan Vig, Shama Rangwala, Ian Tien, Jamie Magnuson, Melissa Theodore, Anaya Bedad Batiste, Garcelle John, and the streamer of the teachings over the last 2 days, Alessandra Jordan. Thank you all. And for those who have provided donations, thank you. I'm Beverly Bain, Creative Scholar Strike for Liberation. Again, in love, solidarity, and struggle for liberation. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Okay, I think we